Hey forum, my name is Manny, aka CascadeScents. Welcome to another video. In case it's your first time here, just know that I'm a long-time fragrance enthusiast on and off YouTube. And if you are also that or you are just learning about fragrances for the first time, this might be the channel for you. Now, just like the title says, this one is on some of your guys' fragrance pet peeves. So once upon a time, I went onto my YouTube community panel and asked you guys, what are your fragrance pet peeves? So if you guys want to participate in something like this in the near future and you aren't subscribed yet, please do so you can. But yeah, in order to get answers from some of y'all, just so you knew what I was talking about, I kicked it off with my pet peeve, or one of the ones that come to mind first, and that is people who think Francis Kurkdjian's first name is Maison. Not trying to be elitist or anything, but I do feel a slight cringe whenever I've heard someone say their favorite perfumer is Maison Kurkdjian or something like that. Again, what are your fragrance pet peeves? And just to get into mine a bit, maybe it's because I live in Canada and we are bilingual here, or I'm not and nor is most of the country, but I feel like a lot of us know a French common noun when we see one, so we can easily say that Francis Kurkdjian is referring to his house here as far as the title of his brand, and it's of course not his first name, but it's nothing that actually pisses me off. Again, it's just a slight cringe. But with me out of the way with, we might as well get into some of your guys' answers finally now. Let's start off with Sean. Sean's actually a good friend of mine. When people refer to Aventus as Creed or call everything aftershave or cologne without knowing what these words actually mean. Same with people thinking perfume / parfum is for women and men, I guess, respectively. And guys, this is an easy one. Part of why society likes to refer to perfume / parfum for women is because fragrances of such a high concentration were mainly made for women for, I guess, decades. You seldom saw men's targeted fragrances as perfume / parfum concentration is what I'm trying to say, and a lot of what we had to deal with was a lot of the lighter stuff in the eau de cologne / eau de toilette concentrations. It would just be really weird if we walked around saying that we were wearing toilettes or toilets, at least in the English speaking language. So a lot of us just colloquialized fragrances in general that were for men as colognes because of that concentration. None of these generalizations really piss me off. If someone's willing to have this conversation, I'm willing to have it with them too. And if you just dive into the world of fragrance, this is something that you'll find out real quick, that you can find either unisex, female, or masculine scents of all of those concentrations. That being said, the Aventus as Creed thing is a little bit funnier, at least in my mind. It's kind of like when you go to the bookstore and you find books with the author's name kind of splashed all over the cover, and then the title of the book is a little smaller, implying that the marquee of the author's name is a little bit more paramount to the story, or that's what's being used to suck you in. And I guess with a brand as magnanimous as Creed and how cool their bottles look, I guess I get it. Although the Aventus font here is a lot more legible than some of the cursive that they used to use for certain fragrances back then, and or still now. Next up, we have Henry M. When someone is trying to tell you they like a certain fragrance, but instead of telling you the name of the fragrance, they just give you the brand. And yeah, kind of like what we described with the Creed thing here, not shocked whatsoever. I feel like the brand that I see this the most with, at least in my circles around here, is Versace. Like, it could be Versace Man Eau Fresh that they're talking about, or Versace Pour Homme, or Versace Aero, something like that. But some people will just say, have you heard of this Versace? And I'm like, which one? And they're like, I don't know, it's this color. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I mean, at least they can describe the colors or the bottles, so that helps. But yeah, at the end of the day, not everyone's going to be completely fixated on fragrances, and I'm still more okay with people discussing fragrance on even a more approachable level than not being interested in fragrance whatsoever. So yeah, I'm kind of okay with this. But of course, I too wish that they would learn beyond this level as well. Next up, we have Mixen. I absolutely can't effing hear reviewers say it has iris in it, but not that powdery, makeup-y iris like in your En Parfum or the Intense anymore. We get it, iris can be powdery / makeup-y, but there are more fragrances with iris than DH. I feel like I hear this in every single video, no matter the channel, whenever iris is mentioned. And Mixen, this furthermore applies to the public who really isn't into fragrance whatsoever, and a lot of us who make YouTube videos here, a lot of those kind of people watching us comprise mainly of our audiences altogether. I mean, if you're quote unquote an OG or a real one, or someone who's deeper into it like you, who doesn't need to hear this, we appreciate that. It's not like we like sounding like broken records. So when a more casual person who watches my videos only really has the Dior Homme line to go off of, and we are trying to explain to them iris can smell a plethora of other ways, we just feel like we have to get their mind off that scent ASAP, and that's why we kind of get it out of the way with. Trust me, we don't like having to give that spiel as much as you don't like hearing it. On to number 5 now, from James Andrew. When people spray mist in the air and walk through it thinking they're smart and they know the correct fragrance etiquette. Yeah, this is a cute one. It's probably one of the more cringe-worthy approaches to actually spraying fragrance. If you're still doing this, please stop and instead try spraying your pulse points instead. You know where there's a lot of blood and heat emitting from, and that's really what's going to make your fragrance radiate. So again, on the inner parts of your joints and or your neck, probably your best bet. That and on your clothes, if you want to get a more enveloping effect, just make sure not to stain your clothes. Every fragrance is different. Next up, we have zanesense. When I tell people I'm a fragrance collector and they ask me if I know Acqua di Gio. Again, going back to some of our more previous points, people just simply aren't into fragrance as much as we are watching and talking about fragrances in videos. But again, I'm still glad that even the more casual people about fragrances are into fragrances remotely versus not into them at all. And if you're the type to want to gatekeep fragrances, then I feel like you need to do something else with your life. Don't be that elitist that says, hey, you guys don't really like fragrance for X, Y, and Z reasons. Nah, man, that's the fuck shit. You guys gotta get off that high horse. I don't think that's where you're coming from, Zane, don't worry. I'm just going to presume that you think it's a little cringe, that's all. Next up, we have nicktoth. I hate when people compare fragrances that smell nothing alike, or when two fragrances have a similar note and people call them clones. I really do think these people have COVID, and if they don't, they could. Yeah, motherfuckers like these definitely have to get tested for coronavirus. It's just funny because I feel like the notes can be misleading sometimes because people like to, in their head and in their ego, come off smarter than they actually are. It's just like, oh, this fragrance has bergamot and this one does too, so they must be clones. Or take a more fringe note. Oh, this one has iris and this one has iris. They must both smell like Dior Homme. Now, of course, that isn't it. We're not saying that these fragrances don't have clones. It's just more often than not, these ones aren't clones. That's all. Sure, getting to a certain proficient level at fragrance is kind of hard, but we can all do it. We can all have a proficient level of nasal detection, I guess. Just let's knock it off with some of the wishful thinking and just kind of smell fragrances for what they are. If it does so happen to smell like something cool, if it doesn't, also cool. That, and again, get tested for coronavirus and or vaccinated if that is possible too for you. Next up, we have jazzbob. When people ask for advice and don't describe a scent profile they have in mind, but merely search for beast mode performance, seems like these people are craving for attention. And yeah, I'm completely with you here, Bob. Types who are craving attention and are looking for beast mode fragrances are the types to think that bigger is better in general, regardless of what that bigger can consist of. Pause. Like, sometimes I see those posts on forums and I just want to respond with some of the most fecal, oody, musky smelling, weird stuff that is sure to piss people off around them. And hey, maybe that might be the case for them. But I kind of just stay out of those discussions because I don't want to enable people like that. I genuinely want people to be comfortable with the scent bubble that they are in and liking the scent that they are in first and foremost. So it's almost like I'd rather this person tell me what kind of fragrance that they're looking for and what level of performance that they're also looking for too, versus not stating the kind of smell they're looking for, which implies that only people's reaction for better or worse is what matters to them, rather than enjoying it for themselves too. And that's where they come off as an attention whore, because it only looks like optically that they are seeking attention. That's all. Next up, we have Miguel Maya. When people discredit a fragrance as boring simply because it's safe and mass appealing. Not everything has to be groundbreaking or unique. I'm totally fine with rocking a fragrance that's safe because I know. And I actually like this one too, because a lot of people attribute being in the fragrance community or value per se in stuff that has to be quote unquote creative, fringe, next level as far as a lack of familiarity when it comes to the mainstream. And yeah, I'm completely with you, Miguel, because I also too find it annoying that people in the fragrance community mainly only attribute being here and good value with liking stuff that is fringe and or not so mainstream. And to be fair, there is something to be said for that. It's okay to like that kind of fragrance, or those kind of fragrances rather, but there's nothing wrong with something that's really high level, but also equally familiar or crowd pleasing for, again, those masses. You do you, Miguel, you do you. Next up, we have LG here. When English reviewers try to pronounce fragrance terms in French, Italian, or whatever, what do you expect me to do? Kind of go around saying shit like Versace or Yves Saint Laurent or Guerlain? Nah, it just sounds fucking whack, so knock it off with that. Like, imagine if I was walking around saying eau de toilet, like, what the fuck? Anyway, moving on to the next one, here we have Jon Snow. When people don't respect my collection, hobby, and call it frivolous, but have no problem with, for example, shoe collectors who won't wear them, just look at them. Like, I actually wear those back there, so nothing is off limits for me. And to be fair, why something like shoes is actually more respected nowadays as far as the mainstream is because they're kind of a source of income for people sometimes now, and or fetch an exorbitant amount of money, so naturally there's a cachet associated with them in which they kind of have to be respected, despite some of them being like sweatshop quality. I mean, supply and demand's a bitch, it's just what it is. Versus fragrance, when the optics of fragrance is a little different, where you kind of spray something in the air and it only lasts however many seconds or hours. I think part of the problem is that people, again, can't really see fragrance, so they don't really know what they're spending their money into, and again, because it doesn't last. So it is kind of hard to say to normal people that this is more legitimate or as legitimate as other hobbies or lifestyles. It's just a fucking hard sell. But hey, I wouldn't sweat it too much because that just means there's more for us fragrance enthusiasts. But if you need to find like-minded people about fragrance, definitely just go to your local fragrance groups, whether they're on Reddit or Facebook or other forums, and start talking to people who care versus ones who might not. But yeah, hope that helps. Next up here we have Judith Mulco. When someone doesn't like a fragrance themselves but will still wear it due to compliments, that happens more than it should, and I swear it gives me an allergic reaction. So I presume that you are allergic to the fact that people are wearing fragrances not for themselves, and at times it being a fragrance they don't like but they know someone else likes, so they wear it anyway. And if that's what you mean, then I guess I am allergic to that too, because I genuinely want people to also enjoy it themselves. But to a certain extent, I feel like this is like a self-worth kind of optics thing for a lot of people. Maybe to a certain extent they don't have it in them to be able to see that they can be an asset in X, Y, and Z ways, so they are probably less inclined to wanting to be maybe complimented on their performance at work or maybe their personality, and they seek it in other rather surface level, superficial ways like perfume. Now, mind you, I still love perfume, I still like getting compliments on perfume, but ultimately I have to like it first. It's my scent cloud at the end of the day, it's my level of expression at the end of the day, but of course desperation kind of supersedes all of that for certain people, so that's why it kind of sucks. So I feel you, Judith. Next up, we have Molly44. When people lie about how many compliments they get. I mean, I really can't speak on anyone else, but I'll speak on the compliments I actually get, and I'm completely legitimate about it. To a certain extent, whatever comes out of my mouth might sound like embellishment too, and it should, to be completely honest, just because people almost kind of expect me to be wearing something because they know me as the fragrance guy, at least locally, as far as my friends. So if there's something even remotely crowd-pleasing and or something that struck a chord with them, they'll almost always tell me that they like it. So yeah, if I legitimately say that I get hella compliments with Aventus or another 13, I genuinely mean it, but it's not like something I take that much credit in bragging about, because why the fuck should you? Listen, I kind of just look at fragrances like this. Fragrances are like haircuts because you do none of the work but you get all of the credit. So yeah, in a roundabout way, I think it's really shallow if that's the number one thing that you look forward to getting credit on. Just look and smell good for yourself first and foremost. Be honest about what you're getting feedback wise. Don't feel yourself too much and just keep it moving. As some of y'all find some of these results hard to believe, depending on who you hear from, I get it. But as far as this case, I really have no reason to lie to you, so I hope you take my word for it. Next up, we have BRock87. When you ask someone is wearing and they say, I don't know, my wife got it for me. Again, this kind of goes back to the Aqua de Jo comment from earlier. Some people are just going to be casual about fragrances, especially, you know, guys who look at it as really trivial and maybe want to just smell a certain way for their wife. Again, I'm just happy that he's wearing fragrance in general versus not. So yeah, fair play to him. Next up, we have SCAL LMAO, smelling a hype fragrance that I blind bought and realizing that it is overrated. Again, that's a thing. Try not to blind buy full bottles. I mean, if you can afford it and you can afford it being bad on you, then great. But if you don't mind going into a store once everything is safe, being able to test stuff for yourself, say if they have it there, then you might as well do that. Sure, I think the future of fragrance is inevitably online because it's a cheap enough good to where it's okay to perhaps blind buy all the time and whatnot, but it still gets expensive. We're still talking dozens, if not hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. So yeah, smell it in person if you can and or buy decant. Next up, we have one from Kaiser Soze. People who say say they're wearing oud because of one or both of these reasons. Number one, the perfume has the word oud in its name, and number two, the sales rep told them it's oud. Synthetic ouds can smell great, but it's misleading to say it's just oud. But here's the thing, like, I don't really hate this too much depending on how the person talking about it comes across. If someone knowingly knows that it is a synthetic oud and they say it has oud in it, they should probably state what kind of oud it is, say if it is synthetic, or say if it's another kind if they know. But I'm not going to write someone off for saying something like it's an oud fragrance if it's not real oud in it, because there's other ingredients from IFRA that are actually outlawed, but we're still going to say that that note is in it and or it is that kind of fragrance. Like technically the floral of lily is actually barred or banned. But you can't stop me from saying that this is a lily fragrance, say if it is one, so just don't get too triggered at it. But yeah, you should definitely still state that it is a synthetic whatever note it is being replicated here. So yeah, I'm with you for the most part. Next up we have Rich Mitch, and he says free bottles for review. And depending on what kind of creator you're talking about, Mitch, I actually might disagree. Say if it's someone that is looking at payment and or free bottles as a gift and they are going to provide in return overtly positive feedback for the audience for them to perhaps buy this stuff. Say if it's like an I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of situation, then of course I'm vehemently against that. But if you're gonna say that you hate free bottles for even me, I think you'd be kind of wrong. It is simply more subject matter for me to get out a review on. No one's buying my opinion, and if say they wanted to pay me, which I would gladly accept, say if they weren't trying to buy my opinion, it would just be more motivation for me to actually get that opinion out. If you don't believe me, check my record. I've been given bottles in the past that I've given thumbs downs on and whatnot, so what can I say? And I guess maybe watching a review that is a bottle that you personally bought, maybe in your mind would have more credibility, but I also don't agree with that always sometimes, just because that's a personal different kind of bias, which maybe some people are more okay with because it's a bias they could potentially share as far as the same reasons they'd buy it for too. But I also don't like reviewing bottles from my own collection as well because I think it's annoying. Because the answer is quite obvious. Of course it's going to be a positive review at the end because I bought it for myself. So I'm often not that motivated to do videos like that, sorry. Which is why you seldom see reviews on this channel despite me having a lot of fragrances back there. So again, what I would prefer is if people did send me bottles and would be okay with not having me shill, because I would not shill, period. But say if it is a shill type of reviewer, then I don't know, fuck them. At the end of the day, people doing this on such a platform should be looking out for two things: how they truthfully feel about something and their integrity for you guys. Just saying, you shouldn't want to be lied to. And last but not least, here we go with Ericstromblad, when people who wear the frag doesn't match a frag. And Eric, I feel you here as far as some people's personalities getting on more with certain different fragrances, but will choose to wear other ones instead. And to be fair, that's kind of me as well. Like, look behind me, not every one of those fragrances are ones that I personally get on with completely. It's not a bad thing to also want to experience stuff that isn't completely you. I think it's also you having an appreciation for those things as well, being more open, being more reverent and whatnot. But I am also with you as far as not losing your sight on the prize, as far as always maintaining that love for what you like most given whatever lifestyle you're in. So don't worry, I'm still not going to lose track of my favorites, but there is still something to be said for people who want to experience stuff that isn't completely them, or if they're just trying to find themselves. So just give them a chance. But there it is, forum. Thank you again for watching, and thank you to whoever left me a really creative response. You guys were a lot of fun here, and I hope you guys enjoyed looking at yourselves here, enjoyed my commentary and whatnot. And if you have yet to chime in on the fun, please be sure to subscribe to this channel as well as hit that notification bell for more, so you'll be notified of these kind of posts when I want to include you in future videos and whatnot. And if you really like this video, be sure to tell me as well by liking the video and commenting too. So yeah, now that about does it. Thank you again for watching. Take care for now. Peace out. Bye. My name is Manny. Wear your fragrances.